All right, so you know how everyone's always talking about how important it is to protect our forests?
Yeah,
But have you ever stopped to think about, like, what that actually means?
right.
Like, it's more than just planting trees, right?
Absolutely. And that's what we're going to be diving into today.
Exactly. We're going to be taking a deep dive into this fascinating article that I found in the Political and Economic Weekly,
Oh, fantastic.
all about India's forests.
Okay, great.
And it really made me think about, this whole idea of forest conservation and what it actually entails, especially, for all those UPSC aspirants out there.
Yeah, it's a hot topic for sure.
Oh, it is for sure. Because, we always hear that India's forest cover is increasing, which sounds amazing on the surface.
Yeah, you'd think that's a good thing, right?
Right, exactly.
Yeah,
But as we dig deeper into this article, we see that there's a little bit more to the story than meets the eye.
definitely. There's this whole distinction between greening and conservation that's often overlooked.
And that's what's so interesting about this article. It really challenges this idea that just because there's more green cover, everything's hunky-dory.
Yeah, it's not as simple as just looking at the numbers.
So for all our listeners out there who might be, getting ready to tackle those tricky UPSC questions, what's the key takeaway here?
Well, the article really emphasizes the need to differentiate between greening and conservation.
Okay, so break that down for us. What does that actually mean?
So greening is often about just increasing the total area covered by trees, which might sound good in theory, but it doesn't necessarily translate to actual ecological benefits.
So it's not just about quantity, it's about
Quality, yeah.
it's about what kind of forests we're talking about, right?
Exactly. Think about it like this. You could have a massive field full of just eucalyptus trees.
Okay.
It's green, sure, but it doesn't have the same biodiversity or the same complex relationships between different species as a natural forest.
Ah, I see. So it's like comparing a monoculture plantation to a thriving, diverse ecosystem.
That's a great way to put it.
And I think the article uses some really good examples to illustrate this point, right?
Yeah, it contrasts like the Western Ghats or the Sundarbans with these monoculture plantations.
Right, because those are like prime examples of thriving ecosystems.
Exactly, with a complex web of life that you just don't find at these plantations.
And that's what conservation's all about, right? Protecting and preserving these natural forests with all their intricacies.
Exactly. It's about recognizing the value of these ecosystems beyond just their potential for, timber or other resources.
It's about their intrinsic value.
Exactly. And safeguarding that for generations to come.
That's such a crucial point, and I think it's something that often gets lost in these discussions about, just increasing forest cover.
Yeah, the focus needs to shift from quantity to quality.
Absolutely. But why should we care about all of this? Why is it so important to conserve these natural forests?
Well, there are so many reasons, and this is where it gets really relevant for anyone studying for the UPSC exams.
Right, because this isn't just about abstract environmental concepts. This has real-world implications for India's future.
Absolutely. Forests are essential for India's well-being on so many levels.
Like what? Give us some examples.
Well, they're crucial for combating climate change.
Okay, so they're not just pretty landscapes. They're actually playing a role in this global challenge.
Exactly. They act as massive carbon sinks, absorbing carbon dioxide from the atmosphere.
And that's something that, India's made commitments on right under the Paris Agreement.
Precisely. We've pledged to reduce our emissions, and forests are a key part of meeting those targets.
So by protecting and restoring forests, we're not just helping the environment, we're actually contributing to India's global commitments.
Exactly. And the India State of Forest Report 2023 actually quantifies this. It shows that India's carbon stock in forests has increased by 81.5 million tons.
Wow, that's a significant number.
Yeah.
It really highlights the impact that forest conservation can have.
Absolutely. And that's just one aspect.
Yeah.
Let's not forget about biodiversity.
Right, India is known for its incredible variety of plants and animals, and
Forests are home to so many of them.
they're the foundation of that biodiversity.
Exactly. And this isn't just about pretty pictures or, saving species for the sake of it.
Right, there are tangible benefits to having this rich biodiversity.
Absolutely. Think about the Western Ghats. They're not only a biodiversity hotspot, but also a source of genetic resources that are crucial for developing climate-resilient crops.
Oh, that's interesting. So protecting biodiversity is actually linked to our food security.
Exactly. It's about ensuring that we have the genetic diversity to adapt to a changing climate.
That's fascinating. And what about, things like natural disasters? I've read about how deforestation can worsen the impacts of floods and landslides.
You're absolutely right. Forests play a critical role in regulating water flow, preventing soil erosion, and acting as natural buffers against these kinds of disasters.
So protecting forests can literally help save lives and protect property.
Precisely. And there's one type of forest that's especially important in this regard, coastal mangroves.
Oh yeah, mangroves. They're like those incredible ecosystems that thrive in salt water.
Exactly. And they act as natural barriers against cyclones and storm surges, protecting coastal communities.
I remember reading about the impact of Cyclone Amphen on the Sundarbans. Those mangroves really took a hit.
They did, but they also helped to mitigate the damage.
It's amazing how these ecosystems can be so resilient.
And here's a fact that might surprise you. Mangroves can sequester carbon at a rate 10 times greater than mature tropical forests.
Whoa, they're like the ultimate multitaskers.
They're protecting coastlines, combating climate change, you name it.
Okay, so we've talked about the ecological benefits, but what about the economic and social importance of forests for India?
That's another crucial aspect, especially when we talk about sustainable development and inclusive growth.
Right, because it's not just about protecting the environment. It's about uplifting communities and ensuring that everyone benefits.
Exactly. And forests provide livelihoods for millions of Indians, especially tribal communities who depend on them for food, medicine, and other resources.
And isn't there a government scheme aimed at supporting tribal communities through forest-based activities?
Yes, the Pradhan Mantri Vendon Yojana aims to do just that. It promotes tribal entrepreneurship by helping them develop and market forest-based products.
That's a fantastic initiative because it recognizes the importance of involving local communities in conservation efforts.
Exactly. And let's not forget about the benefits that forests provide to our rapidly growing urban areas.
That's a good point because we tend to think of forests as being, out there somewhere far away.
But they actually have a direct impact on our cities.
Exactly. Urban forests can help combat the urban heat island effect, improve air quality, and provide much-needed green spaces.
Yeah, think about the Aravalli Range. It plays a crucial role in protecting Delhi from dust storms and pollution.
It's like a natural shield for the city.
Exactly. And economically, forests can boost ecotourism, which can be a significant source of revenue and jobs.
Right. I've heard about how some of India's tiger reserves are generating significant revenue through ecotourism.
Yeah, the article actually cites a study that estimated the economic value of just 10 tiger reserves to be like 5.96 lakh crore.
Wow, that's a staggering amount.
It is. It really highlights the economic potential of well-managed forests.
And on a global level, I'm guessing India's forest conservation efforts contribute to achieving the Sustainable Development Goals.
Absolutely. In fact, India has secured a high global ranking in terms of forest area gain.
Okay, so we're not just participating, we're actually leading the way in some aspect.
We are, which is something to be proud of.
Wow, this is eye-opening. It's clear that forests are much more than just trees. They're crucial for our environment, our economy, our well-being, and our global standing.
Exactly. And understanding all of this, the complexities of forest conservation, the challenges we face, and the potential solutions is crucial for anyone aiming to contribute to a better future for India.
Well said. And I think this deep dive is a great starting point for anyone who wants to learn more about this fascinating and vital topic.
I agree. There's so much to explore, but before we get into the challenges and solutions, I think it's time for a quick break.
Okay, let's take a moment to catch our breath, and then we'll be back to delve into the darker side of this story, the challenges that India's forests are facing.
Welcome back, everyone.
All right, so we spent the first part of our deep dive,
Yeah.
really highlighting why forests are so important.
Yeah, we covered a lot of ground.
We did, but now it's time to face some hard truths, right?
Exactly. It's time to look at the challenges that India's forests are up against.
And I think this is particularly relevant for our listeners who are preparing for those analytical questions in the mains exam, right?
Oh, absolutely. They need to understand both sides of the coin.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So what does this Political and Economic Weekly article tell us about the most pressing issues facing India's forests?
Well, it brings up several crucial concerns, but one of the biggest is the impact of development projects.
Okay, so we're talking about infrastructure mining industry.
Exactly. All those things that are essential for India's economic growth.
But they often come at a cost to the environment.
Yeah, it's that classic dilemma of development versus environment.
And the article specifically mentions the Forest Conservation Rules of 2022.
Yeah, those rules were intended to streamline the process of getting forest clearances for development projects.
So in theory, it should make things easier.
It should, but some argue that it's actually made things more complicated.
How so?
Well, the concern is that these new rules might actually make it easier for projects to get approved without proper consideration for their environmental impact.
So it's like we're trying to speed things up, but we might be cutting corners in the process.
Exactly. And that raises concerns about deforestation and the displacement of tribal communities.
Right, because those communities are often the ones who depend on forests the most.
Exactly. And this ties into another challenge, the implementation of the Forest Rights Act.
Yeah, that act was a landmark legislation aimed at protecting the rights of tribal communities over forest land.
It was, but it's faced a lot of hurdles in terms of actually being implemented effectively.
So it's one thing to have a law on paper, and another to actually see it translated into action on the ground.
Exactly. And the article gives the example of the Kanha Tiger Reserve,
Oh, right, Kampa.
where there have been reports of tribal communities being displaced in the name of conservation.
That's a really complex issue, trying to balance the need to protect biodiversity with the rights of people who call these forests home.
It is, and it's something that UPSC aspirants need to grapple with.
Because there's no easy answer, right?
No, it's about understanding the nuances and the different perspectives involved.
And this brings us to another important point, that the article raises the issue of forest degradation.
Right, it's not just about losing forest area, it's also about the declining quality of the forests that remain.
So even if the overall forest cover is increasing, we might be losing the most valuable parts of those forests.
Exactly. The article talks about a concerning decline in very dense forests.
Which are the most biodiverse and carbon-rich.
Exactly. It's like losing the heart of the forest.
And this is where the distinction between greening and conservation becomes even more crucial, right?
Absolutely. Just planting more trees won't necessarily address this issue of forest degradation,
It's like we're gaining quantity, but losing quality.
which is not a sustainable approach in the long run.
And speaking of losing valuable ecosystems, we can't forget about mangroves.
Oh, yeah, those coastal superheroes.
They're facing so many threats from development to climate change.
They are, and the India State of Forest Report 2023 actually shows a decrease in mangrove cover.
That's alarming, considering how important they are for coastal protection and carbon sequestration.
It is, and then there's the issue of forest fires.
Oh yeah, those images of burning forests are heartbreaking.
And they're becoming more frequent and intense due to climate change and human activities.
It's a double whammy.
It is, and the report actually highlights the recent surge in forest fires in Himachal Pradesh and Jammu and Kashmir.
That's really worrying because those fires not only destroy ecosystems, but they also release massive amounts of carbon back into the atmosphere.
Exactly, it's a vicious cycle.
And we've talked about monoculture plantations before, but it's worth mentioning again, right?
Oh, definitely, because while planting trees is generally a good thing, planting vast areas with just one species can actually be harmful.
How so?
Well, think of a natural forest as like a bustling marketplace full of different vendors offering a variety of goods and services.
Okay, I'm following you.
A monoculture plantation is like a supermarket with endless aisles of the same product.
Ah, I see. So it lacks the diversity and the resilience of a natural ecosystem.
Exactly. It's like simplifying a complex system, which makes it more vulnerable.
So it's not just about planting trees, it's about planting the right trees in the right way.
Exactly. And this brings us back to that crucial distinction between greening and conservation.
It's all connected.
It is. And we also need to remember that behind all of these challenges are real people whose lives are intertwined with forests.
The article talks about those conflicts between conservation goals and the livelihoods of people who depend on forests.
Yeah, it uses the example of the Baiga tribes in central India.
Right. Whose traditional way of life is deeply connected to the forest.
Exactly, and sometimes those traditional practices can come into conflict with conservation efforts.
It's a tough situation trying to find that balance between protecting the environment and protecting the livelihoods of people.
It is, and it's a reminder that conservation solutions need to be holistic.
They need to consider the social and economic dimensions as well as the ecological ones.
Exactly. It's about finding ways to protect forests while also ensuring the well-being of the people who depend on them.
This is a lot to process. We've uncovered a whole web of interconnected challenges here.
We have, but don't worry, we're not going to leave you hanging.
In our next segment, we'll explore some of the potential solutions and hopefully end on a more optimistic note.
Because despite all these challenges, there's still hope for India's forests.
Stay tuned. All right, so we've talked about the importance of India's forests and the challenges they're facing.
Yeah, it's a pretty complex picture.
It is. But now let's shift gears and talk about solutions.
Okay, because it's easy to get bogged down in all the doom and gloom.
Right, but there's always hope. And this Political and Economic Weekly article actually offers some really interesting insights into potential solutions.
Yeah, it emphasizes that there's no one-size-fits-all answer.
It's not like we can just plant a bunch of trees and call it a day.
Exactly. It's about a multi-pronged approach, tackling the problem from different angles.
So it's about combining different strategies working together.
Exactly. And one of the most important aspects is community participation.
Oh, that makes sense because the people who live in and around forests, they have the most at stake.
They do, and they also have a wealth of knowledge and experience.
So how do we actually involve these communities in conservation efforts?
Well, there are a few ways. For example, the Forest Rights Act and the Panchayats Act, or PISA.
Oh, yeah. These are.
They provide a legal framework for recognizing the rights of forest-dwelling communities and giving them a voice in decision-making.
So it's about empowering those communities.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that they're not just passive recipients of conservation policies, they're active participants.
And there's some successful models out there, right?
Yeah, like joint forest management or JFM.
Where communities and the forest department work together.
Exactly. It's a collaborative approach that has shown some promising results.
So collaboration seems to be a key theme here. What else does the article suggest?
Another important point is the need to focus on restoring natural forests.
So not just planting any trees, but actually restoring those complex ecosystems.
Exactly. It's about bringing back the diversity, the resilience, the ecological integrity of these forests.
It's about quality over quantity.
Exactly. And this involves planting native species, promoting natural regeneration, restoring degraded areas.
It's about giving nature a helping hand to heal itself.
Exactly. But with such vast areas to cover, how do we actually monitor all of this?
That's where technology comes in, right?
It does. The article talks about the growing role of technology in forest conservation.
So things like satellite imagery, GIS drones.
Exactly. They can help us monitor forest cover track, deforestation, detect illegal activities.
It's like giving the forest a high-tech security system.
That's a good way to put it, but of course, technology is just a tool.
It needs to be guided by sound policies and a genuine commitment to conservation.
Absolutely. And speaking of broader perspectives, the article also talks about landscape-based conservation.
Okay, so what's that all about?
Well, it's about thinking beyond individual protected areas.
So not just focusing on a particular national park.
Exactly. It's about considering the entire ecosystem.
The interconnectedness of everything.
Exactly. For example, we need to think about the corridors that connect different forest patches.
The areas between protected areas.
Right. And how human activities in those areas can impact the overall ecosystem.
So it's a more holistic approach.
It is, and it's essential for addressing issues like habitat fragmentation and the impacts of development projects.
And what about mangroves? We talked about how vulnerable they are.
Yeah, they need special attention.
Yeah.
The article stresses the need to scale up mangrove conservation efforts.
So not just creating protected areas, but also integrating mangrove protection into coastal development plans.
Exactly, and promoting sustainable fishing practices, empowering local communities to be stewards of these ecosystems.
It's about recognizing the multiple benefits that mangroves provide.
Exactly, and ensuring that those benefits are considered in all decision-making processes.
And we can't forget about climate change, right?
Absolutely. Protecting and restoring forests is one of the most effective ways to combat climate change.
Because they act as carbon sinks.
Exactly, and it's a nature-based solution that provides a host of other benefits as well.
It's a win-win situation.
It is. And speaking of sustainable solutions, the article also highlights agroforestry.
Oh yeah, I've heard of that, integrating trees into agricultural landscapes.
Exactly. It's about creating a more diverse and resilient system.
So it's like combining the best of both worlds.
It is. Agroforestry can improve soil health, water conservation, provide shade for crops, and livestock even generate additional income for farmers.
And then there's ecotourism.
Yeah, when done responsibly, ecotourism can be a great tool for conservation.
It can bring in revenue, create jobs, raise awareness.
Exactly, and it can give local communities a stake in protecting their natural resources.
But ultimately, it's about addressing the root causes of deforestation and forest degradation.
Right, things like poverty, unsustainable practices, insecure land rights.
So it's not just an environmental issue, it's a social and economic issue as well.
Exactly. It's about creating a future where both people and forests can thrive.
Wow, this has been an incredibly insightful deep dive.
It has. We've covered a lot of ground.
We have. But I think the key takeaway is that forest conservation is not just about protecting trees, it's about protecting our future.
Well said. It's about understanding the interconnectedness of everything and working towards solutions that benefit both people and the planet.
And a huge thank you to the Political and Economic Weekly for providing such thought-provoking analysis.
Yeah, they always have great insight.
And for all our listeners out there, especially those preparing for the UPSC exams, we hope this deep dive has given you a better understanding of this complex and crucial issue.
we encourage you to delve deeper into the source material.
And don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this episode with your fellow aspirants.
Every bit of knowledge helps.
Until next time, keep learning, keep exploring, and keep the passion for our planet burning bright.